All right, we have about a minute remaining before the paper session starts, but I'd like to point out that we have 3 papers in this session, so it's not like we have to rush. I'm Lee Lyle. I am a research associate at the University of Central Florida. I've looked over these papers. I didn't read them in depth, but they look quite promising, so I hope we all enjoy it. With that being said, I will announce the first paper, Impact of Avatar Locomotion Congruence on User Experience and Identification in Virtual Reality, which is a TVCG accepted paper, will be presented by Omar Khan et al. From the University of Calgary. And give it another, oh yeah, you can start when you're ready.
Okay, I'll start at, I guess, 2:30. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Lyle. My name is this like properly working? My name is Omar Khan, and I'm presenting this paper on behalf of my co-authors, Hyung-Gil Nam and Kang-Soo Kim from the University of Calgary. So I want to start off this presentation by posing a question to the audience members. Raise your hand if you've heard of Gorilla Tag before. Okay, cool. So plenty of people have heard of Gorilla Tag. That's great. But for those of you who don't know, Gorilla Tag is a social VR game, and the premise is exactly what it sounds like. You play as a gorilla, and your objective is to tag other gorillas in the environment. And so it's a very simple premise, but I think the most interesting thing about Gorilla Tag is the locomotion system, because it's not teleportation, and it's not really like joystick-based translation either. It's actually an arm-based locomotion system where you have to sort of move your arms in a circular pattern and push off of the virtual ground to move around the environment. And I think this is really interesting because you have a gorilla avatar and you have a locomotion system which is congruent with that avatar. And so we're interested in this congruency aspect. For example, what if your avatar was a human, but you were still using this gorilla-like locomotion system? So that would be an incongruent combination. And similarly, if your avatar was a gorilla, but you're using a human-like locomotion system, that would also be an incongruent avatar locomotion combination. So we were interested in avatar locomotion congruence because most previous research in avatars and locomotion methods have focused on individual effects of avatars and locomotion. And there are very few papers which have explored the interrelation between these two factors. There are a few, but I mean, in general, it's still a very underexplored research area. And so in this paper, we aim to study the effects of avatar locomotion congruence on avatar identification and user experience in VR. So to recap, we have 2 avatars, a gorilla avatar and a human avatar. And we have 2 locomotion methods as well. Arm rolling, which is like this, and arm swinging, which is like this. And so the gorilla avatar is congruent with arm rolling locomotion because it's reminiscent of the movement characteristic, the movement behavior of gorillas. And the human avatar is congruent with arm swinging because it's the motion that we use when we walk. So our primary research question is, how does congruence or incongruence of avatar appearance and locomotion affect avatar identification and user experience? And we also have a couple secondary research questions concerning the individual effects of avatars and locomotion methods, which have been explored in previous research. So for our materials, we developed a standalone Quest 3 application in Unity. And we used avatars from Ready Player Me, as well as publicly available assets, and we edited those avatars in Blender. We also developed a virtual gaming environment for participants to overcome some obstacles in a virtual scene, using their assigned locomotion methods and while embodied as either a gorilla or human avatar. And we placed several mirrors throughout the scene so that users could see their avatar's reflection and maintain a sense of embodiment throughout the sessions. So moving on to our experiment, we recruited 30 participants, 13 females and 17 males. The mean age was 21.7 with a standard deviation of 3.2 and a range of 19 to 35. The participants were rewarded with a $15 Amazon gift card, and they exhibited a medium level of VR experience on average. For our study design, we went with a 2x2 within subject study with 2 independent variables resulting in 4 experimental combinations. Go roll, which is the gorilla avatar with arm rolling locomotion. Go swing, which is the gorilla avatar with arm swinging locomotion. Hue roll, which is the human avatar with arm rolling locomotion. And hue swing, which is the human avatar with arm swinging locomotion. And so of these 4 combinations, the congruent ones are these, go roll and hue swing, and the incongruent ones are these, hue roll and go swing. So for our procedure, we start off with a consent form, followed by a pre-study questionnaire, which was demographics information, followed by a learning phase where participants could learn the locomotion methods without any avatar embodiment. And then we moved on to the 4 experimental conditions, which we counterbalanced using a Latin square design. And the participants had 4 minutes to play through each condition, and they answered a questionnaire after each session. And after all 4 conditions were complete, we had them complete a post-study questionnaire, which consisted of open-ended questions. So our main 2 measures were avatar identification and user experience. And for avatar identification, we used a questionnaire that was previously used in a paper by Van Louis et al. And this consists of 3 submeasures: wishful identification, embodied presence, and similarity identification. And for user experience, we used a combination of subscales from various different questionnaires. Specifically, we used enjoyment from the intrinsic motivation inventory, satisfaction from the use questionnaire, ease of learning from the use questionnaire, and the ease of learning pertains to the ease of learning for the locomotion methods, just to be clear, as well as task load from the NASA TLX. Our hypotheses were that participants would experience stronger avatar identification and a more positive user experience when the avatar's appearance and locomotion method are congruent. And these hypotheses are based on previous research, which says that congruent environmental stimuli typically results in a more positive user experience in VR. So moving on to our results. We used IBM SPSS to analyze the data, and we ran a two-way repeated measures ANOVA. And so this is a summary, a table summarizing all of our effects. The significant p-values are highlighted in yellow. And so on the left side here, we can see the values for our avatar identification measures. And on the right here, we can see our values for our user experience measures. And so for our top 2 rows here, these are the main effects of avatar appearance and locomotion method. And as you can see, there are a few significant main effects, but more interestingly, we observed significant interaction effects for every single one of our subscales except for task load. And when we take a closer look at our data, we find that for avatar identification, for all 3 of our subscales, wishful identification, embodied presence, and similarity identification, we found that the congruent avatar locomotion combinations resulted in significantly greater scores for avatar identification than the incongruent ones. And you can see this reflected in the X pattern that you can see in the graphs here. And we observe a similar pattern for user experience. So for enjoyment, satisfaction, and ease of learning, we found that congruent avatar locomotion combinations resulted in a more positive user experience than incongruent ones for these subscales. However, we did not notice this effect for task load. So moving on to our discussion. Our hypothesis 1 was that congruent avatar locomotion would enhance avatar identification, and this hypothesis is supported by our results for all 3 of our measures. And we found a few participants' quotes which reflect this conclusion. For instance, participant 2 said that an avatar which had a matching method of locomotion made them feel more connected to their character. And participant 12 said that when they saw their reflection as a gorilla, it made them want to act more like a gorilla. And it's a similar story that we saw for user experience. So our hypothesis 2 was that congruent avatar locomotion would improve user experience. And this is what we observed for 3 out of 4 of our subscales. And we found a few participant quotes to support this conclusion as well. For instance, participant 24 said that it felt like the gorilla avatar was better paired with the arm roll locomotion method, and participant 4 said that the human avatar worked better with arm swing. So we've outlined a few implications for VR design, the first being in fitness and exercise gaming applications, because congruent avatar locomotion could encourage more active participation in these sorts of applications. We also think that our results could be applied for rehabilitation and physiotherapy applications, because congruent avatar locomotion when performing movements aligned with therapy goals could improve the experience of using the applications in this context. And of course, social VR and entertainment can also be improved using congruent avatar locomotion combinations, such as VR chat, because many of the people who use VR chat don't use human avatars, so a lot of them are like animal-like avatars. So we think that our results are particularly useful in these sorts of contexts. So that concludes my presentation. I'm a bit early, so I guess I have maybe a bit of time for questions. So yeah, thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, Omar, for the talk. I was curious, so the only significant effect you found on the task load measure was the appearance of the avatars? And could you talk a little bit about why maybe the appearance had a significant effect, but the locomotion method did not?
Yeah, for sure. That's a very keen observation. So I guess what you're referring to is this. So we found a significant effect of avatar appearance on task load. And if I remember correctly, when we looked into the data, we found that when the avatar appearance was a human, the task load was significantly reduced compared to when the avatar was a gorilla. And the reason for this, I think the reason for this is that, we're humans, and so we look more similar to the human avatar than we look to the gorilla avatar. And so I think maybe that could be a possible reason, because when you're embodied as a gorilla avatar, maybe the mismatch between actually looking like a human and being embodied in a gorilla avatar might affect task load. I'm not totally sure about that, but yeah, that's what I think.
Thank you for a great presentation. This is really nice work. I've got one question about the participants that you recruited. So I noticed that in the responses that they gave, which were really, I think, insightful and really support the work nicely, they used things like locomotion method and locomotion technique.
Yeah.
And so what was the background of these participants? Were they experienced VR users or were they novices?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I actually addressed this on one of the slides here. So we actually measured, or I guess asked them about their VR experience in the pre-questionnaire. And so we sort of used a Likert scale of 1 to 7. And the mean response for that question was 3.3, which I guess is sort of like a medium level of VR experience. But I think the reason that the participant quotes included wording like locomotion method is because we actually, so in the procedure, in the learning phase, I actually used the terminology of, locomotion methods. So I actually told them that, that the arm rolling, I used terminology like arm rolling locomotion method and arm swinging locomotion method. So I think that might have been the reason that they used that terminology in their open-ended responses as well.
This is a really interesting talk. Okay, so one question I would like to ask is that you mentioned about the motion, right? The hand motion and leg motions. So how do you make sure that the participants really perform the motion that you ask them to perform? How you measure that? Let's say, for example, if you ask someone to walk, right? Okay? However, for the walking frequency or magnitude, that it will depend on other people. And maybe that deviate away from what the avatar that they should perform, okay? So let's say, for example, if your avatar is a baby, let's say, just to the stream, okay? Or a kind of bird, okay? A bird with small wings, so short wings, something like this. So I just want to have your ideas about how you think about this.
So if I understand your question properly, you're asking how we're sure that the participants sort of use the locomotion methods correctly. The way that I sort of program the system is that the avatar, the participant's position would only change when they were sort of performing the locomotion correctly. So for the gorilla-like locomotion, I actually used the exact same source code as the Gorilla Tag game because that locomotion is open source. So the way that it works is it's not the participants aren't actually going to move when they're using a human-like arm swinging system. It's just not going to work that way. So I actually made sure to show them how to use each of these locomotion methods during the learning phase, so that they were aware of how to use these locomotion methods. And if they tried to do something else, then they wouldn't have been able to navigate the environment properly. Does that answer your question?
So do you use some kind of technique to, let's say, to recognize whether the motions satisfy what you set for in your system, or just let them do it freely?
I made sure that they were doing it correctly in the learning phase, but if they had like any problems like during the actual experiment, I sort of just like stepped back and let them experience it themselves, unless they were doing something like totally wrong, in which case I stepped in and reminded them which locomotion method they were supposed to use.
Okay, thanks.
All right, that's about the time we have for questions. So let's thank our speaker one more time.
Hi everyone, my name is Anka. Thanks for the introduction. And today I'll be presenting our paper titled The Honest Virtual Self, Effects of Avatar Personalization and Motor Control on Physiological Responses to Deceptive Behaviors. And this paper is in collaboration with Darren Kosker and Dana Stanton-Fraser, who couldn't be here today. So a brief overview before I get into the specifics of the paper. I'll talk about some core concepts underpinning the paper and the motivation for conducting the study, followed by the specifics of the methods, summary of the key findings, and then finally the discussion and the conclusion. So first of all, what is embodiment? Embodiment is a core concept in this paper, and it refers to the bodily sensation of owning, controlling, and being located within the boundaries of one's body or a virtual avatar in virtual reality. Embodiment is built on multisensory integration of visual tactile, visual motor feedback, visual proprioceptive feedback, or combinations of these streams of information. And a very common way in which this is implemented in modern experimental paradigms is through affording users motor control over their avatar. So that means that people's real motions are tracked and mapped onto a virtual avatar. And people can embody various types of avatars that can vary wildly in the way they look, so their visual appearance, but also their capabilities and functionality. And within these features, a very increasingly prominent one is avatar personalization. And personalized avatars are self-representations that closely resemble their users and that preserve user identity in VR. And the reason why these avatars are gaining traction both in industry and academia alike is because they are associated with increased embodiment, self-identification, a range of user experience variables such as presence, and also with a lack of anonymity in VR spaces, which can be important in some contexts. So avatar-mediated interaction in VR has the potential to become increasingly important and popular. But before this is to happen, we need to ensure that these sorts of interactions happen in a safe, positive, and realistic way. And we know, based on a lot of previous work, that avatar features are important for user experience, for attitudes, for behaviors, and for cognition. So the type of avatar people embody profoundly impacts how people feel and how they behave. And for the aforementioned reasons, personalization is particularly interesting here. So in this big category of communication behaviors, deceptive behaviors are particularly interesting because they are very common in social scenarios and because they also have a negative connotation. And we already know, based on computer-mediated communication in other domains, that anonymity plays a role in increasing deceptive behaviors. So people tend to simply lie more when they're hidden behind an anonymous username or avatar or emoticon. In VR, embodiment, on the other hand, reduces deceptive behaviors. So when people have an embodied avatar, they tend to produce fewer lies than when they have a less embodied avatar or no avatar based on previous work. So it could be possible that personalization and motor control, which are these two factors that we know influence embodiment in a positive way, could in turn lead to reduced deception. So this is a mechanism that we're testing here in this work. Also, from a methodological standpoint, it's important to mention that deceptive behavior has been associated with physiological markers such as increased skin conductance responses and decreased heart rate based on a lot of previous work. And we know that inducing genuine deceptive behavior in an experiment is quite a challenging task because of experimenter bias and because people tend to adopt more pro-social behaviors in experiments because they know they're being observed. So actually having these physiological markers that we can record gives us a window into the types of reaction people can't actually control in an experiment. So all of this information culminated in our research question, which is how do avatar personalization and motor control impact users' physiological responses to deceptive behavior? In order to address this question, we conducted a study on 20 participants with 8 males, 12 females. We employed within participants design, and the independent variables were personalization, motor control, and trial type. And I'll get into more details about how we implemented all of this right now. So in terms of avatar personalization, participants embodied both a personalized and a generic avatar. You can see here on the left-hand side, the personalized avatar next to an image of the participant. And then on the right-hand side, you can see a photo of the generic avatar. And the personalized and generic avatars were gender matched and photorealism matched to ensure that we're controlling for these potential confounding variables. The personalized avatars were created using an in-house photogrammetry pipeline. So we took 77 photos of the participants at the same time in a photogrammetry rig, and then these were compiled to obtain a 3D model of the participants. And you can see here a range of the avatars we employed in the study. In terms of motor control, people had either motor control or no motor control. So in the motor control condition, people had full body Vicon motion capture. So this meant that their avatars moved in perfect synchrony with them in real time. And in the no motor control condition, people experienced an avatar that was performing some pre-recorded very small idling motions that were not synchronized to their real motion. And then finally, the trial type, which was either control versus target. This was a core element related to the task we employ, which is detection of deception task, which has been used in previous work, both in real life settings and in VR. And I'll make this images slightly bigger so you can see the study procedure. So I'll walk you through what a typical participant experienced in our study. So we first did an embodiment phase where people embodied their avatars for 60 seconds by performing a range of motions in front of a virtual mirror. Then they were instructed to select a card from 5 options by pointing towards it. The card would flip around and it would reveal the type of card people picked. And they were told to remember the type of card picked, and they were tested later on at the end of each condition. So all participants recalled the card picked correctly every time. And then we had both target trials and control trials. So in the target trials, the aim was to get people to perform deceptive behavior, so to lie. And in order to do this, we asked them whether the card they picked was the card they actually picked, so in this case, an ace of hearts, but they were instructed to always say no. So this would mean that, in this case, they lied. In the control conditions, the same question was asked, but it was asked in relation to a card that people didn't actually pick. So when answering no, that meant that you were being truthful. So that's why this was a control trial. We measured skin conductance responses and heart rate, which are 2 of the most well-established physiological markers of deception, as well as embodiment, a range of avatar perception variables, and presence. So what are the key findings? The main finding here is that heart rate deceleration, which is one of the key physiological markers of deception, was significantly higher in the target personalized compared to the control personalized conditions. So this means that in the personalized condition, people preserved the physiological reaction that we've seen before in real life settings and other VR studies, but this did not happen in the generic avatar condition, where people's identity was concealed. Also, personalization and motor control had positive effects on embodiment, presence, and avatar perception variables. And this is something that we were expecting, and it's in line with previous work as well. So, based on these findings, we know that deception leads to a distinctive physiological reaction, which is decreased heart rate, only when embodying a personalized avatar, which doesn't happen when people embody a generic avatar. And this is interesting, especially considering the embodiment results we found, which were that both personalization and motor control impacted embodiment. So it seems that the relationship between embodiment and deceptive behaviors is not as clear-cut as previous research might have suggested, but it's actually something special about the personalized avatars that led to this preservation of physiological reactions, something that made lying more realistic and led to stronger reactions. And this could be the fact that the personalized avatars preserves people's real identity. So when they look like themselves in the virtual environment, people reacted stronger. So based on some of the limitations of our work, there are very exciting future research directions. So for example, we employed the simple deception task with no real social interaction, and this was done because we wanted to have a very simple and robust and fundamental experiment, but more socially complex experimental paradigms could be employed in the future, where we can investigate the social dynamics and more socially complex scenarios to see if these findings change or if they are preserved there as well. We also didn't use any facial animation or eye tracking, and this would be important just both because they would make the avatars more realistic, but also because they would be important cues in deceptive behavior as well. We also only included 2 key physiological markers, skin conductance responses and heart rate, But more physiological markers could be included in the future, such as pupil dilation, which has been employed before and is a reliable metric, but also neural activity as well, to get a more holistic understanding of the user experience. Thank you so much for your attention. This is my email and my LinkedIn if you want to connect, and I'm happy to take any questions now or later. Thank you.
I have a question. You said it was within subject's design. Were they in the motion capture suit? But as I recall, it's kind of constraining, but for both conditions?
Yeah, so people experience 4 conditions in the motion capture suit. It was about an hour in the motion capture suit with the equipment as well. But we made sure that people took breaks, and we checked every 10 to 7 minutes to see if they want to continue.
Hello, Birgit Nirula from Fraunhofer HHI. Thank you for this really nice talk. It's a very interesting topic. I was wondering whether or how you think the fact that you told people to always say no had an effect on your responses. Because I could imagine that if people were told before to say no, that the responses might be a bit different as when they are really knowing they are lying, but the other person doesn't know they're lying. So if you can elaborate on that a little bit, that would be nice.
Of course, thank you for the question. We just followed the procedure of the task that has been employed before. Of course, there are some issues related to perhaps motivation or like the genuine deceptive behavior, but we wanted to make sure that this is consistent for all participants and in all conditions and elicited in the same way, if that makes sense. We also, to make sure that people don't just give an automatic pointing response every time, we randomize the location of the no option on the screen to make sure that people are actively paying attention to the task as well. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. It's really interesting. So I have a question in case of your dependent measure. You know that heart rate is pretty good measure. However, other evidence like subjective report or any other evidence should be congruent with heart rate results. So do you have any other evidence, including subjective measure? And second question might be, you may compare some deceptive behavior and control condition as well, but relatively small number of trial. I believe multiple deceptive behavior might be different to physiological response. For example, first deceptive behavior might be higher heart rate decrease, or third and fourth might be smaller kind of thing. Do you have any kind of a comparison like those kind of like effect as well?
So we did check for like the first bunch of trials compared to the last batch of them, and we didn't find a difference there. We also had, in each condition we had 11 trials, so not like 11 questions asked basically, and we discounted the first one in every batch to ensure there are no novelty effects or like stronger reaction the first time people would react to counteract that.
Hey, thanks for the great presentation. You had the person embodied as themselves, and then you had the generic avatar. Have you considered, like we heard about VR chat in the last presentation, where people might be embodying a really different avatar from themselves, but feel still ownership over that avatar? So would that have a similar effect compared to a generic one?
Yeah, that would be very interesting to investigate. Here we were simply interested in manipulating personalization, so we wanted to keep everything else, including photorealism, gender, as many features as possible, basically the same in the two conditions. But yeah, that's definitely a very interesting future research direction to see how, like, maybe not even a humanoid, maybe an, completely different shape to one's real body would influence this, and if it has a maybe more intense effect than the generic avatars, definitely.
Nice presentation. Got a little question for you. I just wonder how to use your results or conclusion in real VR application. Can you make any examples?
Yes. So I think the main takeaway message from this is that using personalized avatars makes people react more realistically or stronger to deceptive behaviors. So if you are planning to perhaps create a social scenario, adopting personalized avatars might be an option there to increase, the reaction to whatever people are doing there. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So basically, if you want a realistic reaction and you want to make sure that people feel, kind of like, not the consequences, but maybe the consequences of lying in a way. So of displaying deceptive behavior, maybe adopting a personalized avatar is the way to go in VR design.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for introduction. My name is Bosheng Huang, and I am currently a senior undergraduate student from Tsinghua University. And it's a real pleasure to be here today. Now, let me start with a question. Have you ever before had moments during exercise when you felt stronger than ever before? Maybe when someone praised how well you were doing, or maybe when you changed into a professional-looking workout outfit. Now, imagine if that motivation can be programmed, designed, and delivered through the virtual avatar you embody in a digital world. That's precisely the question we explored. Can the perceived capability of your virtual avatar enhance exercise performance? In recent years, VR has emerged as a promising tool in the field of physical exercise, driven by changing lifestyles, limited access to physical spaces, rising health awareness, etc. It doesn't just offer convenience and entertainment, it also creates programmable environments which shape our behaviors and emotions. And one key concept here is the Protos effect. We unconsciously adapt our behavior to match our avatars. We proposed a unified perspective to explore this phenomenon, that is, perceived capability. Prior studies show that giving people avatars with idealized fatigue and age can enhance their performance. But the downside is that changing appearance can weaken self-identification. Instead of changing how avatars look, we can change how they behave. Imagine an avatar that smiles and breathes easily. It signals this is manageable. Contrast that with an avatar that frowns and breathes heavily, like it signals the task is very tough. So we shifted the focus from static appearance to dynamic cues, which alter the perceived capability. To ground this, we drew on established literature from sports science. In the real world, athletes' facial expressions are tightly linked to their perceived exertion. Smiling is often correlated with lower oxygen consumption and reduced effort, while frowning often accompanies greater fatigue. And audible heavy breathing is a universal signal of exhaustion. So we translated these real-world cues into our virtual avatar design. Our investigation was guided by 3 key research questions. Do avatars of different perceived capability affect exercise performance? And do they affect users' sense of presence? And is there a link between the exercise performance and the sense of presence? Now let's dive into how we investigate these questions. We built custom VR gym where the participants stood before full-length mirror, holding virtual dumbbells with their after reflected back and then. The task was a dumbbell lateral raise, which was chosen deliberately. It primarily targets the middle deltoid, a muscle that, due to its pennant structure, is less prone to strain. And this allowed participants to perform multiple sets across different conditions while reducing cumulative fatigue that could screw the results. And the three conditions were defined by the avatar's expressions and sounds. High capability avatar started neutral and transitioned to a happy smiling expression during the lift, paired with a subtle ambient wind sound to evoke lightness, just like shoo, shoo. And low capability avatar began with a slightly fatigued expression that shifted to a panned expression during the lift, followed by the sound of a heavy lap breath, just like to amplify the sense of exertion and struggle. And neutral capability avatar maintained a completely neutral expression throughout, with no additional sound effects, which was our baseline. For the avatars, we deliberately used a cartoonish style instead of hyperrealism style to avoid the uncanny valley effect. Cartoonish avatars are also less likely to resemble any specific user, ensuring fairness, and simple outfits prevent distractions, allowing participants to focus on the expressions and sounds. And each participant performed 2 sets per condition, lifting you until failure, and the objective metric was the number of successful repetitions. For subjective experience, we used the standardized I-group presence questionnaire after each set of exercise. Finally, we conducted a semi-structured interviews for qualitative insights. We recruited 30 participants with prior fitness experience to ensure proper form and minimize injury risk. The sample size was statistically determined using power analysis, and conditions were counterbalanced with a Latin square design to minimize landing and fatigue effects. So what did we find? Let's get to the results. First and most importantly, for RQ1, a Freeman test confirmed that repetitions differ significantly across conditions. Pairwise comparisons showed participants did most repetitions with the high capability avatar, median 18, the least with the low capability avatar, median 15, and the neutral capability avatar sitting between 6, median. And in Plantains, when the avatars smiled and looked after us, the people literally lifted more. When he grimaced and gasped, they quit sooner. And this extends the Protos effect. Perceived capability alone can shape physical performance. And next, for RQ2, which concerns the sense of presence. Interestingly, the IPQ data showed no statistically difference across any of the 5 dimensions. That is, regardless of the avatar smiled or frowned, participants' sense of being there in the VR gene stayed stable. This actually an encouraging finding. Our manipulation changed performance without breaking presence. Then for RQ3, the analysis found no significant correlation between the number of lifts and any of the IPQ scores. In other words, a stronger sense of presence didn't predict better or worse performance in this context. Finally, the qualitative feedback brought these results to life. Many participants said the smiling avatar boosted confidence and motivation, while the panned expression felt demotivating. The sound design mattered too. The wind sound made sound feel lighter, while the heavy breathing amplified fatigue, leaving them feeling incapable of continuing. Of course, our study also has its design limitations. Some participants felt the smiling expression was exaggerated. The motivating wind sound, while fitting for high capability, could have its own independent effect. The metric of repetitions to failure while standard in research doesn't always reflect real-world workouts. And finally, as always, larger and richer samples will strengthen generalizability. And based on our studies, findings, and user feedbacks, we propose some design recommendations for future VR fitness applications. The first, real-time expression matching. Instead of a fixed looping grid, future systems could use real-time facial capture to subtly overlay encouraging cues onto the user's own expression. This will enhance authenticity and prevent the exaggerated view some participants noted. Second, scientific reason guidance through sound. Since users unconsciously sync with the breathing sounds, we could design scientifically optimized auditory reasons to guide repetition tempo and breathing, further enhancing exercise efficiency and immersion. So what's the broader significance of our work? We demonstrate that capability-driven design is scalable and generalizable, communicated through dynamic representations like facial expression and sound. Perceived capability can meaningfully enhance physical performance in VR. This approach is scalable, easily integrated with other mechanics, and has implications not only for fitness, but also for rehabilitations, where confidence matters, and for endurance training, where motivation is half the battle. The journey doesn't end here. Future work could tease apart the individual effects of visual and auditory cues, explore long-term adherence, and develop even more nuanced and personalized after feedback systems. So that's my presentation. Thank you for listening. I welcome your insights, questions, and suggestions. Thank you. Please.
Thank you for the interesting presentation. There's some previous work on the kind of visuals of the weights in virtual reality and how that affects the physical exercise. So if the weights look really light, people can actually do more physical exercise than if they look really heavy. So do you think that kind of effect together with your results could have the potential for some extremely effective exercise solutions where the avatars are really happy and lifting really lightweight weights there that would lead to better results?
Okay, thank you for your suggestion. And actually, our procedure design has a weight choosing component. We will have a baseline testing for the participants. He can try different weights of dumbbells and choose dumbbells. I think he can lift for 12 to 15 times, and we think is suitable for her or him to perform the experiment. For sometimes the participants didn't do its best in the baseline testing, so actually the weights of dumbbells have influence on the experiment results. So thank you for your suggestions.
Okay, let's thank our speaker one more time.
Thank you.